I think that being human means I'm part of a species that has a huge impact on the planet, and it's up to me to make good choices with that impact.
Welcome to the On Being Human podcast, where we believe transforming ourselves can positively transform society. Your host, Brandy Fleck, has the honor of exploring the human condition with real people who bravely share their personal stories of adversity, healing, joy, and more. If you're seeking empowerment, strength, and inspiration, listen in to engage and explore tough topics that help us humanize one another, understand ourselves better, spread love, and connect.
Welcome back this week to the On Being Human podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Fleck. Sherry Spivey, originally from Florida and now hailing from rural Tennessee, has been an artist her entire life and has been in the screen printing business since the 80s. She's a self-described pragmatic artist who lives an eclectic life. Sherry chooses to put her artwork on t-shirts because everyone wears t-shirts and they bring joy to people's lives. People treasure the art on t-shirts as self-expression. In this episode, Sherry talks about what her creative process is like, what it's like being in business with her husband, and she also opens up about living with type 1 diabetes. You'll definitely love gleaning inspiration from Sherry's creative process and hearing that little bit of t-shirt nostalgia you indulge in is A-OK. Subscribe to the On Being Human podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Help us out by leaving a rating and review. You can also find this episode at onbeinghuman.podcast.com/episodes/038, where you'll find links Sherry mentions throughout this episode. Want more love? Visit onbeinghumanpodcast.com and sign up with your name and email address, and I'll send you a free gift. It's a personal mantra that I use daily, and I promise no spam whatsoever, just one little mantra with a big impact. You can also join in the conversation with us on Facebook. That's at On Being Human Podcast. Now, let's hear from Sherry and dive into how she's spreading joy, being her true self, and living her life. Today, we are here talking to Sherry Spivey. Welcome to the show, Sherry. I'm so excited to have you here and talk a little bit about your art and your life and all the things you've got going on. How are you today?
Great.
Very good. So would you please introduce yourself for the listeners and give them a little background info about what you do and what you're all about, who you are?
I'm Sherry Spivey, as mentioned. I am originally from Florida. That's where I was born and raised. Spent most of my life there. Moved up to Tennessee about 6 years ago and I really love living here. It's been a really amazing experience and has really got me inspired and creative and moving again with my art. So really enjoy being here in Tennessee. I am a graphic designer. I do logo design and t-shirt design. My husband and I own a small screen print shop, and we do a lot of t-shirts. We have our website, and we do medieval themed shirts, and that's rentarts-design.com, where you can see some of our t-shirts that we've done. I do work for a lot of different organizations, companies, people all over the country. That's a huge part of what we do. I do some small projects on the side from time to time where I do some hand painting on signs and shields for different medieval combatants. I work with fiber and fabric for myself. I like to do some crochet, knitting, quilting, basically various art things is what takes up most of my life. And I also train dogs and I teach dog classes. So I kind of have a very eclectic life.
Gotcha. Now, I guess that was sort of your background, and art obviously is a huge part of your life, but how would you describe yourself as a person?
I am a pragmatist, and I have very eclectic tastes. So I've done the Master Gardening program. I've raised chickens from egg to plate. I train dogs. I do a lot of different things. So my tastes vary. I like all kinds of music. Just eclectic, I think, would be the best word to describe me.
Awesome. And then what is the most important thing to you in life?
At this point in time in my life, my dogs, I spend a lot of time with my dogs, one-on-one. They go everywhere with me. They work in the shop with us. They hang out while we're hanging out. I spend a lot of time traveling with them, doing dog shows. We do agility. I do dock diving, different various dog competitions. So dogs are a huge part of my life. And my husband, he's been, he's amazing at supporting me in the things that I love, whether it's my animals, my art, anything I'm interested in. He's always there to help me with that. So my husband and my dogs are the biggest thing in my life.
Gotcha. So you've got a lot of good things going on, but what would you say inspires you the most in general?
Mother Nature, outside colors of the flowers. And that's one of the things I love about Tennessee is the wildflowers. And it's amazing. It's like every 2 to 3 weeks, there's a new flower and a new color from those, the red buds in the spring with purple, and then the bright yellow dandelions. Just driving down the road and seeing, there's a farm over here that was covered in buttercups and just yellow and blue skies and the beauty of Mother Nature just really, whenever I need to spark creativity, I'll just go out for a hike, whether it's on the property or at one of the state parks close by, and see Mother Nature, listen to the waterfalls. Tennessee is an amazing place.
Awesome. Yeah, it is really beautiful. Is it different? Is it more inspiring in nature here than it was in Florida? Or have you always just sort of derived inspiration from the type of nature you're in?
It's different. We made a trip this year. I went out to Colorado for a dog show, and I took 2 dogs with me, 2 German Shepherds, and we drove across the country from here to there, 19 hours. We stopped in Kansas, stayed with friends, and then continued on a trip, and then made it in reverse coming back. Spending time in a car and seeing the depth and breadth of the country, the different landscapes, and to me, it's amazing. It's so inspirational to see the different people, the different countryside, the mountains. We went hiking with llamas here in the Great Smoky Mountains, and then we went out to Colorado to the Rockies, and it was amazing to see. And I think we lose that in a lot of our day-to-day lives, that just the inspiration from our planet, what's out there, the beauty, the starkness, the real part of it. We get wrapped up in cell phones, internet, plastic, Walmart, that's not inspirational. Being out here and seeing the countryside, and that's just amazing stuff. So going from Florida, where I grew up, we went to beaches, we hung out in the woods, went hiking there, the different trees, different flowers, different sky, different colors. It's just different animals. So I like exploring and seeing new things, having new experiences.
Awesome. Well, now let's pivot a little bit into your evolution as an artist. And you mentioned it's a huge part of your life, and we talked a little bit about what inspires you, but how have you evolved over the course of your life?
I don't remember a time when I didn't draw or paint or sew or make things. And it has always been just a part of who I am. So my evolution has been, I've improved as an artist for sure. After 50 some odd years of drawing things, it gets a little easier. Mm-hmm. But I like learning new things. I think I'm still evolving as an artist. I like learning new skills, new art forms. I have tried and dabbled with a little bit of everything over the years. I've done stained glass, all kinds of fiber art, drawing, painting. I've done watercolors, acrylic. The biggest evolution for me has been the computer and the internet. So all of those things that I've done my whole life, I still pick up a pencil. I still draw. There's nothing better in the world to me than a brand new art pad and brand new pencil that's just been sharpened and that first pencil stroke on the paper. But most of what I do these days is on a computer with Photoshop or Illustrator, designing logos for clients. A good chunk of what I do is commercial art, stuff I'm getting paid for by clients to design logos for their businesses, for their t-shirts. So all of that now is on the computer. And when I first started back in the early 80s, we did all of that by hand. I hand cut ruby lith to make stencils to shoot screens from. All of that is now output to a printer, a large format printer, and it does all of that work for me, which makes it sound like it should be quicker and easier. It's just different, but it takes the same amount of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Slightly different design and creative process to work on the computer versus working with a pad and your hands instead of, I've tried different graphics tablets, but the feel is different. I can't explain that, but nothing to me beats, like I said, a brand new pencil, brand new pen, working on a pad paper, and having to shelve that a little bit while I work on the computer is a little frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I know I can just draw it instead of manipulating the mouse and the graphic tablet with a pen.
Yeah. I know you said nothing beats the pencil and paper, but does it give you fulfillment to have a finished product, something you've made, even if it's on the computer?
Yes. It's just it's a different process. It's still a piece of art, but it's different when it's a tangible piece of something. Mm-hmm. It's when it becomes a tangible thing, I think that is the most fulfilling. So when I design a new t-shirt on the computer, it's on the screen, and then there's the process of breaking that apart and putting it into a screen and then putting it on the press and putting ink on and printing it, getting as close as I can to what was on the computer. It's sometimes difficult explaining to clients that what they see on a backlit screen is not going to be identical to what is on the t-shirt that they're getting.
Gotcha.
It's just a slightly different sort of thing, but I still enjoy. I don't know how many shirts over the years. I wish I had a counter that I had kept track, but it's still very fulfilling to print out that first shirt of a run. When you put ink in the screen for the first time and you pull the squeegee across and you lift up the screen to see what it looks like, that's still a cool thing.
Gotcha. So, well, I'm making a connection right now between what you're saying with making things and your definition of what it means to be human in terms of impact. So do you feel like your art, whether commercial or personal, makes an impact?
Sure. People enjoy what we do. We've sold shirts to the medieval group for 30-some years now. Mm-hmm. And people come back to me every year and tell me about their favorite shirt that we've done for them. Someone brought me a shirt that we printed at our very first event 30 years ago. They still had a t-shirt from 30 years ago. So that's pretty awesome. And then when we drive to the event, we do 2 events a year where we sell our product direct to the public. And driving onto the site and seeing people setting up their camps and things, wearing our t-shirts, or while we're traveling there, seeing them at a random rest stop or restaurant along the way. It's kind of cool. We were traveling out to California to visit some friends, and we had a layover in Dallas, and we were sitting there on the chairs, just looking around, and a guy comes running through the airport wearing one of our t-shirts. And, this was years ago, but I mean, what were the chances of, we're from Florida. This guy was in an airport in Dallas, and he's wearing one of our shirts. we've put out thousands and thousands of t-shirts out there, and they make people happy. We had one client years ago that he pulled up and they had ordered a bunch of t-shirts, and we opened up the box and he pulled it out and changed his shirt right there in the parking lot and he put his new shirt on, and he was just so thrilled. So it's awesome to make people happy with what you have made, and that they have some pride in, they have ordered this t-shirt and they've had input into the design of it, and it becomes their thing. So we get to help them put their vision onto a product that they can wear and use every day. So it's kind of it's a small thing, but a smile and happiness is not a small thing in the world today, I think. So.
Right. Yeah. Why t-shirts? Why did you choose that as your method of putting art into the world?
Yeah. So I've heard over the years, people have said, well, you're not a real artist because,
no,
you're not making a canvas or making a thing. Well, I may not charge a lot for my t-shirt, but I sell a lot of them. So I guarantee you the person that made the comment doesn't have even a fraction of the number of prints out there that I do, right? So, t-shirts are a tangible thing. People wear them, but eventually they wear out and they get a new one. There's always a market for a t-shirt. Everyone needs clothing, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody wants decorative clothing. I grew up in Florida, and it's a very touristy area. We were over near the beach, and everybody lived in t-shirts. So the surf shop over there has sold millions and millions of t-shirts. Everybody that comes to Florida wants a t-shirt with Florida on it, right? Mm-hmm. They show what we like. They show what we do. They show who we work for. There's a lot of ways to express yourself with a t-shirt. And my very first t-shirt that I ever printed was in high school. We had a great teacher named Barney Andrews, and he was a really awesome guy. And he taught a screen print class. And I was taking a commercial art class. Most of my electives were art classes of some sort. And I thought it sounded interesting. So we ended up printing shirts for the high school. We printed shirts for the cheerleaders and all kinds of things. And that led me to my first ever job was in a screen print shop. And I started printing t-shirts there, and it somehow just stuck. Even though I had some brief excerpts into other jobs and things in my life, we always ended up back with screen printing. And the biggest screen printed item are t-shirts. Mm-hmm. So I didn't necessarily choose it. It just sort of happened that way.
Gotcha.
And I rolled with it. It wasn't, if you had asked me when I was a teenager what I wanted to do, I wanted to be an architect. And I wanted to go to school, and I did not have the funding to do that. So I ended up working in a screen print shop while I thought about what I wanted to do with my life. And I went to college and worked in the screen print shop while I was doing my community college stuff. And then I went off and did some business things for a while and absolutely hated it. I liked being able to create something every day. Mm-hmm. And some days it's things that I like creating. Some days it's things that I'm being paid to create for someone else. I'm putting their vision on a page. So I have to be able to get into their head and come up with something new. And the medieval events that we've been doing for 30 years. And I always think, oh my God, what am I going to do this year? I've done 30 years worth of things, but yet somehow I come up with something new every year. So it's kind of fun, and it's cool because it's different all the time, mm-hmm. even though the process of making the t-shirts is the same, if that makes any sense.
It does, yeah. And let me just say, I totally think that even though you put arts on a t-shirt, it's still art, and you're still an artist.
Well, yeah, because if you think about it, when you buy a t-shirt, you're buying the artwork. Mm-hmm. You're not buying a t-shirt. We could go to Walmart and everybody could buy whatever color t-shirt that you would like to have. But when you buy a t-shirt, you're buying the artwork that's on it. And frankly, I buy t-shirts when I go on vacation or I went out to Colorado to the dog show, I bought a t-shirt out there because that's where I went and that's what I did. And it's a souvenir that I get to keep. Mm-hmm. And every time I put that shirt on, it makes me remember that trip that I took. When we went to California to visit our friends, I bought a t-shirt at the Monterey Bay Aquarium because that's where I went and that's what I did, and it represents parts of your life. And some people will wear it for a while and get rid of a t-shirt or give it to Goodwill or do whatever. It passes through a lot of hands in some cases. And then there are other people that cherish those as a memento of their event. Like I said, we have people that have been following us for years and years and years, and they come every year and they buy their t-shirt for the year. And then they make quilts out of them so that they can, even though the t-shirt might be worn out, they keep the design. So that to me is the kind of amazing part. 30 years from now, no one may ever have one of my t-shirts. It may not last, but for a short while, it made somebody very happy. So that's kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah, you've hit on so many interesting themes there, which I'm sure we'll keep exploring, everything from creation to how people remember events that were dear to them. It just seems like a very, again, going to your pragmatic personality, you described yourself as pragmatic. It's a very pragmatic way to help people keep those memories and things like that. I really like that.
Sure.
Yeah, so if you could describe your creative process for us a little bit and then tell us what the act of creation does for you personally, that would be awesome to hear.
Typically, a person will contact me and they will tell me that they have an event coming up and they would like to have t-shirts. So my job and my process is to sit down and think about what type of event it is. It can be anything. We've done things for memorials. We've done things for high schools. I just printed a bunch of shirts for the local college today. I'll take that job for an example. He contacted me and said, we have our spring clinics coming up and I need a shirt and we want it to be purple. And so I took the information that he gave me and I get on the computer and I'll look through fonts and I'll surf around a little bit on the internet and look for an inspirational piece. So this particular job, I had a font that I really liked. And so I started with that. And then he had some specific clinic information he wanted some graphics for. I needed a show cow and a chicken and floriculture and nursery landscape. So I surfed around a little bit more and found a couple of inspiration pieces for that. And I made some graphic elements to represent the leadership. I used a human head with gears inside and a graphic version of that with a graphic cow silhouette and a chicken silhouette. And I added all of these things to the lettering in different ways. So all of the pieces of very disjointed information came together into a design. And then I send it to the client. And sometimes they will have changes. This particular piece I was very happy with how it came together. And he was too. So he tells me that that's awesome. And he would like those on his shirts. So I got input into the color and the design, and the entire thing came out of my head. Sometimes it's just a matter of moving things around on a page until something sparks an idea. Sometimes it's just looking at the fonts, typing in different information, maybe seeing how I can change those letters into something artistic. Mm-hmm. And it's just a matter of thinking about it for a little while, drawing a little bit maybe. I'll oftentimes have a sketch pad, and as I'm surfing through the internet, I'll start to jot some things down, do some little doodles, then I will put it all together on the computer. So that would be a typical creative process. Generally take an hour or two to come up with a design, depending on the complexity of it, of course. Mm-hmm. A simpler thing like this with just very graphic, quick images is more of an hour, hour and a half sort of deal. Sometimes I will manipulate photographs. So I will go out and take photographs. I have a kind of stock library of images that I use, that I've taken, that I can go in and use filters and different presets that I've made to make a really good image that will be easy to print on a t-shirt, knowing not many artists do the entire process. You have a lot of artists that will do the design work and then it's sent to a printer and then they do the rest of it. I do from the very beginning of the idea. I do the artwork on the computer and then I separate it, print it out to film, and then my husband will shoot screens for it and then we both print from time to time. So we pretty much, I've touched everything from the beginning to the end on those down to the invoice. So that's kind of a typical job for me for just a regular t-shirt design.
Gotcha. And then, so going back to your business and your website, Renarts Design, what importance does the Renaissance period in history play in your work and what your customers are looking for, and why is that incorporated in the name of your business?
When I first got started in screen printing, we were trying to come up with a name. We were very heavily involved in the Society for Creative Anachronism at the time. Mm-hmm. And the word Renaissance, a Renaissance man, somebody that does a little bit of everything and that they're good at all kinds of things. And that's what we wanted to represent in our company, that we're able to do many different things. So that to me is the Renaissance, that new age of enlightenment and exploration and creativity. So, you think Renaissance, you think Michelangelo, you think Leonardo da Vinci, some really great artists came from that period, and that's where we're going. Had I known how often I would have to spell Renaissance to people, I might have chosen a different name. After 30 years, it's kind of old hat. Anybody that has written me a check over the years, I've had to spell Renaissance out for them, but just not something I thought about in advance.
Sure.
We were heavily involved in the SCA and still are. We still sell at Gulfers and Penzic, mm-hmm. two of the big events that they have here on the East Coast. So we have a lot of clients that we've gotten through that medieval group. So we still do t-shirts for different groups within that group. We just shipped out shirts to a barony in Florida, or the Kingdom of Trimaris. So we know those people and what they like because we are those people. So that kind of was a bit of niche marketing that we did early on, doing those events and some themed t-shirts to them. Mm-hmm. And we know that genre very, very well. So I've done a lot of research. We have a lot of books and a lot of information on the Renaissance period, on Vikings, Romans, the Middle Ages. So that era has always inspired me. I've always loved the illustrations and calligraphy. So that was important to me at the time, and something that has stayed with for most of our lives.
Gotcha. So would you say you still seek to communicate that idea of Renaissance with your art and all art that you do?
Absolutely. Very inspired by the Middle Ages. I love those early illustrations. Always have, always will. My home, I have a lot of Pre-Raphaelite prints and fleur-de-lis everywhere. Everybody knows I love fleurs. So it's just part of my eclectic taste. I love the Middle Ages, always have. From the earliest time I can remember, my grandmother taught me how to read when I was 4. Mm-hmm. So before I ever got near a school. And as soon as I was able to go to a library and have a library card, I read everything I could get my fingers on. And then the Greek mythology, Roman mythology was very intriguing to me. And then when I got into history classes and learned about, King Arthur and the knights and the Middle Ages, that's just always in the back of my mind. So it's part of who we are. And it was one of the cool things when I met my husband, that he had read the same books that I had read, a lot of science fiction, fantasy stuff. He had read the similar books, so we had a lot of very similar tastes. And we have a huge library of books. I will always love a book. The smell when you open them up, when you go into a bookstore or a library.
Oh, yeah.
There's just nothing else like that in the world to me. Early on, I got into, the whole King Arthur and knights and the Round Table, and Guinevere, and those things have just always stayed with me. I've always loved that genre.
Sure. What is it about the Middle Ages that appeals to you?
I think it's more of what the SCA purports itself to be, the Middle Ages as it should have been, right? We always want to think about, the knights and the ladies and the gowns and the beautiful parts, but there were some awful parts of those periods. But I like the thought of the fantasy more than the actual stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just all knight in shining armor, that sort of fairy tale.
Yeah.
Romanticizing of it. Yeah.
Well, speaking of romance, you are in business together with your husband, as you mentioned before. How does business impact your personal relationship?
So, yeah, some days it's great, and other days not so much. We kind of figure we've been married since 1988, so quite a few years now, and we spend on average 20 some hours a day together.
That's amazing.
Yeah, for a long time, right?
Uh-huh.
So you either like each other or you hate each other's guts, and it depends on the day. We have 95% of the time get along great, and we're best friends. So that relationship has been there always for me. The vast majority of my life has been spent with him. And the first couple of years we were married, we had jobs in different locations. He was working at the Space Center and a lot of Department of Defense contracts. And back under the Clinton administration, they cut a lot of that stuff. So he didn't just get laid off. His whole job disappeared from the world. So it was a huge change, and we ended up going into business together. And we knew it would be challenging, and it is. But at this point in time, we've split the tasks, and sometimes we split clients. Certain clients he gets along better with, some I get along better with. They like art. We have different styles of art. He's also an artist. So it just depends on the day, who we're working for and what we're doing. Sometimes we butt heads because we're both very strong-willed. But in the end, we both support each other, and we've worked together this long. We have lunch together every single day, and we get to spend more time than most couples do. So I think if we were normal people, we would get up in the morning and go off to jobs and spend time commuting. And we're very fortunate we get to not do that. We get to have breakfast together every morning. We work, and then we have lunch together. And then sometimes we have dinner together. Sometimes I'm off teaching a dog class or something. But for the most part, we're together all the time. So he'll tell me a story, and I say, "Oh, you've told me that 90 times here." And so I was there with you when you saw that. It's like, "Oh yeah, right." So sometimes we have to go off and have adventures. On the weekends, I am often off at a dog show, or he does painted miniatures. He'll go to a show for that, so that we have different stories. We run out of things to talk about because we're together so often. But it's a good relationship, and I wish a lot of people had that opportunity to have that type of relationship. You don't see that much in today's society because people work in different fields. They have different jobs, different places. It used to be mom and pop shops. The mom did the bookwork and things, and the husband did some of the work, or vice versa. And so I think it was more common decades ago than it is now to have this type of working relationship.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. It's awesome to hear about.
Yeah, still together after all this time. So, yeah.
Yeah. What's your secret?
Our secret is we support each other in what we do, even though sometimes it's in different directions. So if he wants to go off and do something on the weekend, he has my blessing to go do it. We just trust and support each other. That's the big secret.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah, so let's pivot just a little bit into, have there been any notable challenges? And I know you mentioned type 1 diabetes earlier, but have there been challenges in life that art has helped you get through? And I guess too, the relationship with your husband is so tightly coupled with art. How have those things helped you get through challenges?
Well, yeah, type 1 diabetes is if you've never known anybody with it, it's a terrible thing. It's 24/7. The biggest thing that my creativity helped with the diabetes is that I am self-employed. So there are days when I don't feel well or that I'm having difficulty maintaining my blood sugars. So having there to help me is kind of awesome. But being able to set my own schedule, the jobs get done and the clients are happy. It doesn't matter if it happens on Sunday or on Monday or a Wednesday evening. So it gives me a lot of flexibility to deal with my life. There are complications from the diabetes, but the artwork has let me live a life where I can adjust to those complications without having to answer to anybody else, right?
Yeah. I was going to say, can you tell us a little bit more about the types of complications you have to deal with?
Diabetes causes damage to all of your body over time. And the first 20 are pretty easy to deal with. You don't even notice really that it's there. But then you start to have complications: liver failure, heart failure, kidney failure, your blood sugar going up and down. That can cause your eyeballs to swell when you have a super high blood sugar, so it can affect your vision. Neuropathy is a huge problem for me. I'm starting to lose the feeling in the tips of my fingers. So having the computer, being able to create using the mouse, using the graphics tablet versus control of a pencil or a paintbrush, some days is difficult because of the neuropathy, and my feet too. So you can end up losing limbs from the lack of circulation and starting to see some complications now from that. So type 1 diabetes has really affected my life in that I live every day as full as I can. I travel a lot. I do a lot because who knows how much longer I can do those things. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And there's always the thought of losing vision. So it's been very important to me to try to maintain the best control I can without health insurance, because for many years, the quickest way to get rid of an insurance salesman was to tell them, hey, do you cover a type 1 diabetic? And they would hang up the phone on you. So it's been a challenge for most of my life. I was not diagnosed until 23 years old. So I was a little late for what's considered juvenile diabetes. So I had to learn to adapt with that. And my husband's been very, again, helpful to have with me when I start to have problems. So it causes all sorts of health issues other than people think it's just you can't eat sugar, but that's not the biggest problem. Your pancreas doesn't function at all. So I cannot take medication. I have to take insulin. So I'm injecting insulin a couple of times a day to maintain that blood sugar. So it affects my day when I have to stay on as close schedule as possible, and I eat very similar things daily, so I know how much carbs I'm taking in to adjust my insulin, to try to keep on that schedule as much as possible to maintain blood sugar as well as I can. So that has kept me from most of the problems so far. And that's my plan going forward. Get up every day, do the best I can to keep that as level as possible, and deal each day as it comes. So,
yeah. Well, Sherry, I've really enjoyed hearing about your life. I think you've got a lot of joy in your life from what I can tell, and with your dog shows and art and your relationship with your husband and what you draw inspiration from, and would love if you could just leave us with some parting wisdom. So, what's the best piece of advice you have for our listeners?
let go of the small things. They're not important. Live your life, enjoy your life, create things. Don't let other people define who you are. Be you. Enjoy yourself, enjoy your life. Be happy with yourself. When you can love yourself, then other people can love you too.
All right. Well, Sherry, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. It was great to talk to you.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Tune in weekly at onbeinghumanpodcast.com for more soul-exposing explorations of what it means to be human. Until next week, love to you all.